Okay. They're coming. Sure.
Announce you without saying your name wrong?
Don't worry, really.
With a first name, right?
I can go with Peter.
Yeah. What?
Peter?
Oh, yeah. Is it pronounced more like Peter or it really?
No, it's not. It's Piotr, and it's one syllable. It's very hard for non-Slavic people.
So if the last guys coming in can find a seat, we can continue with our next speaker, Piotr. Perfect. And I would like to give him a real warm applause.
Thanks. So I would like to thank the organizers. I would like to also start with a show of hands. Who of you have been recently to a talk that started with a show of hands? Thank you. I don't know why people do this, but I cargo called all the same. So this talk is about persisting little objects, and this is me. Don't worry if you can't pronounce my last name. I have a nickname that I have no clue how to pronounce because it's a character from a book, as you do when you choose your nicknames in high school. I work at the university. I also work at a Warsaw consultancy where I'm the CSO. If you need Ruby work done, give us a call. And I also, which I'm currently most proud of, I was a coach at the Rails Girls in Warsaw, the first one in Warsaw last weekend. And I really fancy this girl. Her name is Marta, and I met her in 2006. I was fresh out of a relationship, 3-year relationship that went a bit sour, and I really needed to get into a new project, like every geek does. And she was really not into getting into that project, but in 2008 I proposed, and for some reason it worked. So in 2009 we married, and we went for a honeymoon. And if you're a Polish guy from a deeply Catholic country, you know that a honeymoon can be really, really exciting. If you have such a lovely wife, she might actually let you code on the honeymoon. So at the honeymoon, we were in Florence, so I created this small project called Signore, or Signor. And the background for this project is I wrote a lot of emails, and I quite often worry that they are really boring. So at the end of every email, I have a funny quote, which might be putting the nail to the coffin of the email, but still, I like those signatures to be random. I hope that people often ignore them, hence ignore. And the way it works is it has a Signore Prego command line interface, and when you do that, it shows you a signature like, sometimes I believe compiler ignores all my comments. And the problem with this kind of signatures is when I write to my mother, who might not be that much into compilers, maybe she's more into Lisp, then I should have a specific signature for her. So I need the signatures to be tagged, and I want to search them by tag so I can have appropriate signatures, like for Perl people, maybe, or for some Ruby developers. Cloud is the data center what Ruby is the assembler. This is a very true quote from DevOps Borat. At the university, I do a lot of scientific computations with Ruby, and this is very interesting approach. I somewhat agree with this, not fully, but still. You can also have combined tags if you want a signature on 2 specific topics. I swear Ruby has more syntax for creating strings than Python has total. What are you talking about? And you can actually negate things. If I wanted to have a Ruby and Lisp code that isn't Python related, I'd have Ruby's optional parentheses. Lisp doesn't have optional parentheses. So I have this command line program. I can also randomly select signatures that are not necessarily this geeky. And it also has a very simple interface for editing stuff. It just asks you about the text, about the author, the source if there is one, the subject if it's something that makes the context more sane. And this is a typical example of an application that has exactly one user. And maybe you have a lot of this kind of pet projects. And maybe you think, how can I start my next pet project where I will have some object that I want to persist? So if I can hear your thoughts, the ones who think Rails generate model signature, blah, 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 Rails generate model tag, Rails generate 6 tags, and so on. No, I would rather you started with a blank text file and think what should be the first line that you should put in this thing if you wanted to code signatures. Any ideas? Like, what would you start with? This is a Ruby file. Well, this is a Ruby 1.9 file, so there's one obvious start that you cannot miss. I will omit this one from the rest of the slides. More of them are code, so just pretend it's there. But let's say we have a sig that is a struct of author, tags, and text. And we have our database, so because we need to persist stuff. And let's say we have a new signature from Patrick Hüssler about Ruby and unicorns, saying, my deploy lock of the day, sleeping for 3 seconds until all unicorns are dead. So we put it in our database by using ArrrrPush. We do the same with a Chris Warren Strath quote. Every time I use Ruby Center partition, I want to give Matt a high five. If you haven't gone through enumerable documentation recently, go again. You should do this about bi-monthly. There are a lot of gems there. Partition is one of them. So we have our database. We want to query it. And we have this nice select method that says, well, give me all the signatures that are tagged with Ruby, shuffle them, and select the first one because we want a random one. And then we print it, and we have this. So this is how you persist very small projects. You keep your IRB session running, or you keep your computing running. So thank you. That was. But if you were scared that your computer will crash, and you wanted to make your objects actually time travel to tomorrow or whenever next, you need to persist them a bit more thoroughly than in an array. So how do we do this? Well, we usually put them in relational databases. We use ORMs. We use things like Active Record, which I have a love-hate relationship with, like a lot of developers. You can use SQL, which is a very nice thing to interact with relational databases. Try it out if you haven't. You can use DataMapper, which will be the DataMapper tool, which will be an awesome way of interacting with object persistence and nicely abstracting the modeling of the objects from the persistence. But in general, sooner or later, you will see that different objects go into different databases. And this is a slide I shamelessly stole from Martin Fowler's talk, The Future is Not Just NoSQL, It's Polyglot Persistence. You should watch this talk. It's linked in the slides. The slides will be linked at the end. This is a great talk, and it basically says that we need to embrace the fact that different things go into different kinds of databases. So my favorite relational database is PostgreSQL. It's relational, obviously, but it has tons of wonderful features. HStore is like a document storage inside of PostgreSQL. JSON, you can put in JSON documents and query them a bit. PostGIS is a whole application built on top of PostgreSQL of handling geographic data. XML, if you're this unlucky, you can actually query deep into the XML DOM trees and query by that. And there's a wonderful presentation. First, 5 things you didn't know about PostgreSQL. Please watch it. It's a bit long at 50 minutes, but it's well worth it. Every 5 minutes of that presentation are really, really great. So PostgreSQL, what I like about it, I think, the most, it has a lot of wonderful built-in types. You can put UUIDs as a native type in PostgreSQL. You can put MAC addresses, IPv4, v6, geometry stuff like points, shapes, and so on. You can create your own types and put them in PostgreSQL columns as columns of this type, and they will work. And what's most interesting for this small example is you can have arrays as columns in PostgreSQL. So if you wanted to store your signatures in a relational database without this being a huge relational project with like 2 models, you would require active record. You can require a logger because we want to see what's going on. And there is a very nice PostgreSX gem that adds this functionality to the current active record. The Rails 4 will have this natively, but for now, I think you need to use PostgreSX. And the way you do this is you start with defining the logger to spew everything it does to your command line, because this way you can see what's going on without having Rails blowing up, tailing the log, and so on. You connect to the database. This is what you do when you don't have Rails behind. You just do something like this, and it works. And let's first create the table for a signature. So we can have anonymous classes, and if you do class new with a parameter, it's exactly the same as if you inherited from a class. So this is an anonymous migration. We create our table for signatures that has a author, text, and tags, which are an array of texts. And we can instantiate and migrate this migration, all of this without the migration having actually a class name. Because let's say for this example, we don't want to persist it, we don't want ever to migrate it down, we can do this and it will work. The thing it will fire to PostgreSQL is create table 6, blah, blah, blah. Interestingly, it will do this. This says that the last column is going to contain arrays of text objects. And those arrays can be of any type PostgreSQL supports. They can be arrays of arrays, provided they are rectangular. So you have to store, like, if you create an array of arrays, you cannot store integers in the top level. But this is really nice. And for this small project, and I bet for a lot of your projects where you either want to denormalize at some point, array support is really nice. So again, we create our model. This is how you create models if you want to do it in one line and don't want to have this class and thing lower than sign and so on. We create our signature, again, from Tim Pope this time, about Ruby and Big Decimal. This is one of my favorites. I wonder if the guy that wrote Big Decimal Inspect has a tragic backstory that explains why he hates humanity. If you ever saw the output of Big Decimal Inspect, you will strongly relate to this text. So again, let's see what it does. So interestingly, it fires up a query that is PostgreSQL specific, but it does insert into 6 blah, blah, blah values. So you can see you can do this kind of value extrapolation when you insert into PostgreSQL, and you say, we want only the ID in return, but we also have this as part of our SQL query. And here you can see that we have like an array of tags of Ruby and Big Decimal. So you can see that PostgreSQL is very interesting, even in the queries we can use to operate with it. So let's create one more signature from Paul Butley. I'd love to see an honest Ruby job ad. You will spend half your time running bundle install and the other half file spelling. And yet another one. Just discover Git rebase interactive auto squash. Holy shit, we'll never again need to do any work. If you haven't seen Git auto squash, do read up on it. It's wonderful. You basically say, oh shit, that other commit has a typo, so I can create my new commit, call it fixup, exclamation mark, and the hash of that other commit, do git rebase interactive auto squash, and Git will automatically squash it to that other commit that we just mentioned. And it can be like the first 7 characters of the SHA as well. So let's say we have this put into PostgreSQL with things like arrays being one of the columns. So how would it work? We fire our PostgreSQL shell. We do select star from 6, and what we see is a table that has IDs, author, text, and also tags, which is an array, but PostgreSQL represents it as something that looks like this. So the first one was tagged with Ruby and Big Decimal, the second with Ruby and Bundler, the third with Git. And the way we query the tags column is we do something that might hurt your eyes a bit, but this is a PostgreSQL specific syntax. Select star from 6 where Ruby equals any tags. Like this is flipped. It looks very bad at first, but this is how you ask whether you want only the rows that have Ruby in any of the tags. You can also say all, so you can do the other kind of narrowing down. And you have all kinds of operation on those arrays. And if you wanted to do this with active record, you can basically, for now, I'm pretty sure Rails 4 will have something nicer, but for now you can just do that explicitly, where tag equals any tags with tag being Ruby. Then you order by random, which means let PostgreSQL do the shuffling and just get the first one. And thanks to ArrrrCamp, this fires up a select star from 6 where Ruby equals any order by random limit 1. So the database does the shuffling and limiting here. And we put it, and we see this. I wonder if the guy that wrote Big Decimal Inspect has a tragic backstory that explains why he hates humanity. So this is one very simple way where you can do things in an environment that you know, which is active record and relational database, but playing around a bit, having only one single large table, having all those nice PostgreSQL features of which you can pick the ones you want. Because I really like the idea of independence from your relational backend, but if you think how often do you change from MySQL to PostgreSQL and whether active record actually gives you what it promises on the tin, which is I can switch my database and everything will work just great. In small project, it does, but in small project, it doesn't matter. In large project, there's often things to iron out anyway. So do remember that this is PostgreSQL only, but also do not be afraid of committing yourself a bit to a given database, because you don't change them that often. So let's go with Redis persistence. And if you have a tick going in your head saying Redis and persistence don't really go together that well, you're probably right. But you can actually persist what's in Redis. You can save the data. If you want the Redis in front to be something that is highly dynamic because it keeps everything in memory, you can do it on a slave, have the slave mirror the Redis in production and just persist stuff to disk. And let's say for the sake of it, let's just first go through a quick recap why we love Redis. It's fast, it's in memory, it's fast because it's in memory. It's very simple, but it has a lot of wonderful small data types. If you have a free evening, go read Redis documentation. It's absolutely wonderful. It's very fast, yeah. So there are actually two ways of interacting with Redis different than the generic Redis RBGem. One is OM, which is a full active record like ORM on top of Redis, which you might want to play with if you like this kind of approach. The other is Redis Object Collection, which tries to represent the stuff in Redis in a bit more object ways. So let's try to play with this one. Let's require our gem, Redis Object Collection. Let's create our signatures, this time without the tags. We will offload the tags to Redis. So we connect to the store, which basically means connect to our default Redis instance in this case and create a new instance of a Redis Object Collection store. And let's create a new signature from Brian P. Hogan. There are so many things in Rails that make you go, awesome, and then 2 years later make them go, I should not have used that. So let's marshal this, because we want to store the things in Redis. It doesn't really have that many things it can store. It are basically strings, which might be binary. And let's, for now, put it in a variable, the marshaled signature. And we want to tag it with, say, Ruby. So the way this could work is on the store you can call init set with a given Redis key, and it will either fetch that set if it's in the database, or at least check whether it's there, or create a new one. And we add this signature as an object to this set. Well, it's a marshaled string, but we add it to an object that represents a Redis set. Let's say we have another one from Greg Brightwhite. The Ruby community is the Woody Allen of programming languages. All neuroses and internal monologues, but lovable and means well. And let's try to tag it with Ruby and movies. So again, if we're not sure whether this tag was there before or not, we don't care. We just init set, and we get an object that is either an existing set or a new set. We add this signature to Ruby and movies. And let's go with another one from Adam Keyes. I want to see a hacker movie where the protagonist just stares in confusion at a stack trace for a few minutes, no typing, no chatter. And let's add this to movies, because we want to have now this situation where we have one signature tagged with Ruby only, one with movies only, one with both Ruby and movies. And if we wanted to query this, we can do this. We fetch the sets, if they exist, for all the tags that we were passed on the, say, command line. And then, what Redis object collection allows us, we can do set intersection. And it offloads this to Redis, which does the set intersection for us, and just returns the objects that are in both sets. So we shuffle them, get the first one. Actually, you can offload, I think, getting a random element to Redis as well. You just need to have the set to be in Redis first. So we would have to create a set in Redis that represents the intersection of those two, and then get a random from those. So let's print it. It's the reg bright white, because we wanted something that is in both Ruby and movies. And this is the only signature that is in both of those sets. So another thing that I really love covering, I did this a bit already in previous talks, but this is a standard library that lets you persist things. It's in every single Ruby version, and it's called PStore. It's from Persistent Store, and it's, again, in the standard library, it saves everything to flat files, so you have a file on this that represents your database, and it defaults to marshalling it back and forth, so it ends up quite small, although quite binary, as you can imagine. But you can use a YAML backend. And if you're into using YAML backends, but not necessarily into PStore, there's also a gem that, again, you can see this recurring theme that every single of those backends, somebody went on and did something that looks like active record. There's a YAML record for this. But let's go with a clean PStore from the standard library. So we go with the YAML version. We create a store for the file 6.yml. We have our signatures again with the tags and the author and the text. And we open a transaction to the store because we want to put the signatures in the store. The store inside of the transaction is a glorified hash, so we need to have some key that will keep all of our store, and I will get back to this in a second. Let's just now put it in an array. And let's put a quote from Mike Perham: "Never wrestle with a pig, you get dirty and the pig likes it. Now replace pig with asset pipeline." So we just push it into the array inside of that store under the DB key. And let's put another one from Solomon White. "If you're ever tempted to add a post-install message to a gem, stop and back slowly away from the keyboard." This is very true. So now we have this store on a disk, and the moment that this block closes, this is when there's a read-write transaction going, and it's either atomically committed or not. So PStore is more clever than you might assume at first. And now that we have this in the file, we can query it quite easily. We can open another transaction, and this means this is going to be read-only transaction, and you can open as many of them concurrently as your file system allows, basically. And let's do, again, the thing we like most, which is go the enumerable way, get the 6 that include Ruby in the tags, and then shuffle them and check the first one. And actually, the return value of this block is the last line, so we can just assign it to a SIG variable. So let's print it. We got the asset pipeline manifesto. So this is how you use the PStore that you have in your standard library. And for very many cases, like my small application here, this is actually a very convenient way. You don't have to spin up any databases. You don't have to install any dependencies. You just have this right out of the box, so to speak. It's YAML, and the main advantage here, so one more thing. I mentioned that we do an array here, and we query it by tag. So you would say that, really, Peter, this is so not performant. As soon as you have like 10,000 signatures, it will start bogging down because you're the full scan of this whole thing. But I'm currently at almost 4,600, and it's way too fast for me to notice. So, but you could, of course, put those signatures in a hash that is keyed with the tags, and then the lookup will be really fast. I actually did that for another project where I was generating some poetry, and I needed to have lines of different length, of different number of syllables, and I just created a large PStore hash because I needed to put it on Heroku. So I put it on Heroku. The hash was keyed with the length, the double length of the lines, and I can generate poetry really fast. Just randomly pick up lines, check whether they rhyme, and you're off to go. So the thing that why I don't key this with tags is because once I have this in the YAML format, I have a text file with my whole database, which means I don't have to have any UI for editing typos. I just pull it up in my editor, fix the typo, probably blow up YAML because it's trickier than you think. But if I don't blow up YAML, then this just works. And if you put this in an array, then it means there is not a single signature is repeated. So there is only one canonical place for editing a given signature. So yeah, so this is why I like this. And the last part of this talk, I wanted to start with the fact that I really like community conferences, and I'm really, really happy that I could meet and see the talks from a lot of great people, among them 3 of my absolute Ruby heroes. One is Jim Wyrick, who is sitting right there. I love this picture. And I finally understood Y Combinator. It took Ruby code for me to work, but it was like the second attempt with Jim's talk, the previous one with JavaScript, but it finally clicked. So thank you, Jim, so much. And Jim is the creator of Rake, which we all really love and really hope that the beta version will get promoted to stable and released, right? Right? We spoke about it in Edinburgh, so in June, so I really need that for a client. So another person is Steve Klabnik, who does wonderful work on, he created our status, he did the wonderful rescue thing, and we also depend on rescue a lot. So this is him talking at the Wrocław conference, which I really like. This is me being all ears of what he's talking about. If you have this Futurama Fry moment, like, not sure if, yeah, I had this. So the third person, there's one, actually, there's one more thing. I love one of Steve's quotes recently. Every time I read all computer science articles, I find that everyone figured everything out before I was ever born. And I needed, for this, I really wanted to have a segue to another meme, which is the conspiracy Keanu, if you know the meme with the Keanu. But there's a third Ruby hero who gave a talk yesterday and went to Hawaii today. And he worked on Rack Sinatra, he works at Travis now, you might know him. And one of my favorite things of what he does recently, he does a lot of groundwork. He goes to all the conferences and makes sure people not put too many memes in their presentations. He's very vocal about having too many memes. So I couldn't put conspiracy Keanu, but I put conspiracy Konstantin. So what if object persistence is not a Ruby problem and other languages solve it already? What if there was a language like Smalltalk that has a VM, let's say one of the implementation being Gemstone, that actually gave you transparent persistence? And these are called either object databases, that the things that were actually designed to store objects rather than numbers, strings, arrays, if you're lucky. And there's a MagLev project, which is a Ruby VM on top of Gemstone. And I really wanted to put it in this presentation, but Jesse Cook, who works on this project, beat me to it. He had a wonderful presentation. Would you like to forget about the database, which is, I think, 30 minutes about how MagLev does persistence and how we work with it. So please do watch this one. And this is a great presentation, and this is how you can do transparent persistence. But we can fake it. Just here, like right here, if we have the right database behind, like MongoDB, we can fake it with Candy. Candy is one of those crazy projects that 2 years ago I learned about it, and I decided it falls very close to the line between genius and insanity. I'm still not sure on which side it lies, but what it does is it gives you transparent persistence of your objects. And it relies on MongoDB, which relies on Bison, and Bison guys are not, or girls, are not really that much into backward compatibility, so you need to monkey patch Bison first. But once you do that, you can require Candy. You can create a class SIG that includes a Candy piece module, and you have transparent persistence. Believe me. Because the moment you create a new signature, the candy behind the scenes, if it's not configured, and it's not, right? It's like, what, 5 lines, 7? It connects to the default MongoDB port on your localhost machine. It creates a database with your username if you haven't configured it, and if it's not there. It creates a collection if it's not there that is called the same as the name of the class. And the moment you set any property that doesn't have a defined setter, it just fires up method missing and saves this into that object that you just created. So at this point, we already have a persisted sig object with an author. And let's say we want to put tags on it, and it goes, how many lines of Java would it take to do this? Right? This is one of the things we love about Ruby. So, and we can also do this the hash-based style. We can get a quote from Michael Feathers from a very unfortunate experience for him, as you can see. And again, the moment we create it, it gets persisted into MongoDB. And there was some work done to make it asynchronous, because as you can see, this is like performance killer. But there is a crunch gem that does the Candy Crunch database asynchronous thingy. And let's go with another one from Zach Holman, which I really like. I think programming riddles, games, and brain teasers are a great way to hire. First one to say fuck this and walk out gets it the job. So let's put this tree with tags. Again, these are arrays, and they are stored in MongoDB as arrays. Ruby, Java, Ruby coding, coding work. So how do we query it? The one thing except for all those presentations that it will be really awesome for you to watch, the one thing I really, really, really ask you to do after this talk is go to the Candy page on GitHub and see the README. It's like a small treatise about Ruby 1.9 development. It is very opinionated. You probably won't agree with a lot of opinions there, but it's so nicely written and so nicely put together. So one of the things that Steve Alley, who did this, doesn't like is the fact that in Active Record you use the class to do the collection thing, and you basically send messages to the class to ask for objects, pretending that the class itself is a collection. So in Candy, you actually create a separate class that say SIGs. It's plural because it's about collections. It includes Candy collection. It doesn't do any clever inferring from the class name. You have to tell it collects SIG. But you can pass a symbol if you are worried about inclusion order and whether SIG will be defined. And the nice thing is it very nicely wraps an enumerable module. So you can ask for all the signatures with the tags coding, create an array, shuffle, get the first one. And this all the time operates only on the Bison IDs, so it's rather fast. So at the end, you refresh, and you actually do the fetch from the database of the contents. So it actually can work with quite large projects. So up to here, you only work with Bison IDs. Well, actually, up to here. So we can put it, and it's the Zach Holman quote. So again, this is somewhat crazy, but this is a very nice way, for example, to start teaching people. If you have, when I showed it at RubyConf last year, there was somebody from the Kids Ruby project, and they said, like, this is a perfect way to get the persistence away from the early teaching stages. You come back tomorrow, and all your objects are still there because they're in MongoDB overnight. You turned off your computer, you turn it back on. If you're lucky, they're still in MongoDB. So what are the world domination plans for you? I tried to get into a proper pirate mood. I don't have a kind of parrot t-shirt, but I have a duck t-shirt, which should suffice. But I worked a parrot into the presentation. There is a quote that I really like. If you have a parrot and you don't teach it to say, help, they've turned me into a parrot, you're wasting everybody's time. And if you have a computer and you use command line and you use like bash or ZSH or whatever, let's say PowerShell, is it called in Windows? If you don't have this alias, computer comma equals sudo, you're really, really missing out, because if you have this alias, you can do things like computer apt-get install PostgreSQL, and it obeys. So please do play with PostgreSQL. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful bag of many treats that you will figure out by digging through the documentation. You can do computer apt-get install Redis, and it also works. It installs Redis, and you can play with it. It's really fast. It's awesome. There's also a quote that I didn't work into this presentation that is, I love how Redis becomes my little pipe, Unix pipe between different projects. And you can put things in Redis and pull them out with a different language, and they should work all the same unless you marshal them. But let's say you serialize them in a sane way. You can do this with a, yeah. OK, I was joking, but MongoDB is a wonderful database, provided you know about its defaults, and you know where to tweak them, and you know what the trades-off are. There's this wonderful triangle, and you know where MongoDB lies. But do install MongoDB or CouchDB, which is a different document database, or your favorite LDAP implementation, and try putting stuff into LDAP and see whether it works. I wonder. I love LDAP. It has this aura of, we are the engineers from the 70s. We created LDAP, and you have to live with it. So LDAP is wonderful if you figure it out. And after that, I highly recommend it. But there might be some impedance at the beginning with working. And first and foremost, please, there are many ways to persist objects. Play around with them. Play around with Postgres, Redis, whatever, MongoDB, CouchDB. CouchDB has a wonderful synchronization features. I learned about the project from the, I think, Scottish police, where they often go with the tablets or mobiles to dark alleys, and they don't have coverage there, but they can do a lot of things with the database, CouchDB, that is on their devices. And back when they do into coverage, CouchDB has a very nice synchronization facilities. It can synchronize the changes that they did on their tablet with the main database back and forth. So thank you very much. This is my internet handle. This talk is already up at talks.net. If you want to try the code examples, play with it, it's up there. And thank you very much. I'm in this unfortunate position where I'm between you and the lunch. So let's say if you have one question, I will be happy to answer it. But I'd rather, after that, you ask me somewhere where we're less making other people wait. Or go for lunch, like some of you. No questions. OK, thank you very much.